Good evening, distinguished guests, esteemed panelists, colleagues, and friends. It is my privilege to welcome you all to the launch of UNICEF's policy brief titled A Future at Risk, the policy challenge of land degradation for children's well-being. This gathering is not just a discussion, it is a call to action. As we stand here at COP16, we are reminded of the urgent and intersecting crisis of desertification, land degradation, and drought that directly threaten the survival, growth, and development of nearly 1 million children around the world. Children are often the invisible victims of environmental degradation. They breathe the dust, suffer from malnutrition when crops fail, and endure the ripple effects of droughts and displacement. Yet they are also the most resilient agents of change. If given the tools, opportunities, and platforms to survive and lead. Today's session is an opportunity to shed light on those challenges and explore solutions. Through this policy brief, UNICEF emphasizes the need for child's responsive approach to land management. This means prioritizing children's health, nutrition, education, and protection in our strategies. It also means involving youth in the fight against land degradation, empowering them to take action and participate meaningfully in decision-making processes. I would like to thank all of you for being here, especially our panelists, our speakers who bring diverse perspectives to this critical conversation. I want also to recognize the immense efforts of our colleagues and partners who contributed to this comprehensive policy brief. Let us approach today's discussion with a sense of shared responsibility and urgency, because the choices we make now will shape the lives of children and the future of our planet. Thank you all, and I look forward to an insightful and impactful discussion. Thank you. I think with this, I will hand over to Al Hanoud first. So I will hand over then to you, all right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I see here that we have a number of friends and colleagues we've been partnering with over the years, and colleagues who attended also one of the activity that we did some months ago in Riyadh. So it was a great training around leadership and advocacy for land. So it's very nice to see you here. I would like to thank also Tatenda from VOCAD for joining us. Tatenda is a great partner. We've been working together also for a number of years, and VOCAD has also contributed to the brief which will be presented to you today. Thanks also to Canada for joining. We're very glad to have Tom. He raised a lot of difficult questions when we invited him for this session. So I think it will be interesting to hear from him. And also Canada being a champion of gender equality and, you know, very much advancing all of these human rights agenda, it will be very interesting to hear from him. So I think we'll have some interesting insights also coming from him. Without further ado, I would like to start with the presentation. I don't know if I can just go on, colleagues. Yes? Okay, great. Thank you so much. So I want to share something. When we were putting together this presentation, we really tried to tell a story as well. So as UNICEF, we have programs all over the world, and we intervene in different ways, right? We provide services to children. We are there when there are extreme events, and you will see on the pictures a number of UNICEF activities all over the world. So all the pictures that you will be seeing here are from UNICEF's programming across regions in the world. And I think it's nice to see then how children are impacted and what is it that we are doing to support them. We wanted to start with this, why DLDD matters for children. As Al Tayeb was saying, we now have close to 1 billion children who are affected by DLDD, really directly affected by DLDD. This is not about indirect impact. We're talking about impacted children who are impacted by drought, by floods, by air pollution, who are impacted by sand and dust storms. So we thought it was important to raise this because most of the times we talk about DLDD, but we don't really talk about the children who are affected by it or other stakeholders. So this was important. And it's very nice at this COP, I have to recognize that we have the youth so well represented. We also have the indigenous group for the first time. So bringing the children here really made sense, and we are happy that we are bringing the data. You see on the picture Vanessa Nakate, who was a land hero and who is now a UNICEF ambassador. So we also wanted to connect the dots, right? Showing also how these different elements link. We also wanted to raise this issue around displacement, because when these extreme events around land happen, when the land is degraded, when there are droughts, children tend to be displaced. And we have now 135 million children who could be displaced globally due to DLDD. And then what happens when the land is degraded? There's this food insecurity issue. So malnutrition is very much linked also to food insecurity and the fact that the lands are degraded. So DLDD does matter for children. And the issue here is that children, even if they are impacted by DLDD, well, they're often overlooked. We just look at, now it's good. I mean, we are making a lot of progress, and we have to recognize the progress. We're talking about men, we're talking about women, we're talking about the disabled, we're talking about rural communities, indigenous groups, but I think we are missing a bit this unique vulnerability of children, and that's what we are unpacking in this brief. So let's look at the risk. So when there is extreme heat, when there are droughts, when there are wildfires, when there are floods, when the air is polluted, how are children differently impacted? I would not want to go through all of these points, but just to raise perhaps a few of them. So issues related to malnutrition I've already mentioned, but also the infectious disease, issues related to asthma because of the health pollution. And, I had a slide actually where you could see what happened from pregnancy to adolescence, and the risks are higher the younger they are. Here you can see the health impacts, and you see all of the complications that may occur during pregnancy due to DLDD. You also see impacts on infectious disease, non-communicable disease, and the impact that this has on children. We talked about nutrition, so the food insecurity that's resulting from DLDD and what needs to be done. We will talk about it later. We talked about education. DLDD disrupts education when there is an extreme event, when there's a drought or a flood. Well, people are forced to move. And when they move, there's no more education for these children. And there are also challenges in accessing education. A very interesting example that's also very relevant for this region, it's extreme heat. When there is extreme heat, when the classrooms are very, very hot, children often do not go to school because it's not possible. So how can we build resilient facilities that also address children's needs, even when there are extreme heats, especially now that we know there will be more of them? Protection. So when children are displaced, there are also protection issues that are linked to this. So the risk of exploitation are higher. We know that children are very often not necessarily counted. When we look at the displacement data, it's not always that we have child-relevant data. So it's good that we are making progress in this front as well. And we were just discussing with colleagues from IOM. Now there are, in some settings, some data on how children are impacted, the number of children in people who are being displaced, etc. But there are also higher risk of trafficking and abuse. We've seen this in many places. Children who are unaccompanied, they face increased risk of exploitation. And financing, and I know that Tom will react to this one because this is really the key thing. I mean, when we talk about it, when you are overlooked, when you are invisible, of course there is no financing for you. And we saw that with this very limited funding when it comes to child responsive programs, only 2.4%. So these are the policy gaps that we've identified: the limited integration of children in sustainable land management strategies, the weak early warning system. So for example, when there will be a drought or when there will be floods, are children getting the alerts as well? Are the early warning systems relevant for them? This work has started now. There are some agencies that are starting to work on this, and UNICEF is contributing to this work also under the Early Warning for All initiative. The cross-sectoral frameworks: when we talk about land, we only look at land and environmental sectors. But how do we bring on board the health, education, and other sectors that are very important for children? And lastly, the insufficient funding, which we also talked about. How do we address these gaps? We just wanted to highlight a few things. So the child responsive policies and programs are the ones that explicitly and deliberately mention children. So it means that when there's a program that is developed on land restoration in X country, for example, there are specific actions for children and the services they rely on. That's really what we want to see. And with that, we have a set of indicators that are cross-sectoral. I will not go through them here, but you can see in the education sector, it might be increasing the resilience of the facilities, having educational programs on land and on land restoration, increasing the knowledge of educational staff and others. On food and nutrition, it might be indicators that track interventions enhancing food and national security for children. Here you see also indicators related to health, to reduce air pollution, for example. And on water, you also see a set of indicators that we are using to track progress. So the key priority areas would be the ones that I have just mentioned. We just highlight them further here. And our key ask. So I will just stop here because this is really why we are here now and why we wanted parties to hear about this policy brief. We really developed this policy brief to make sure that parties understand the unique needs and vulnerability of children, but also to offer some solutions as to what could be done to ensure that children are not left out. And I think that will be a nice segue to the next conversation with the panel. So I'll leave this slide here for you, and I will give the floor to Alanut. Thank you so much.
Good evening, distinguished panelists and esteemed guests, and everyone here gathering at the Restoration Pavilion. My name is Al-Anud Al-Aslab, medical student and MISC delegate. It is both an honor and a privilege to be here with you moderating this important session. This is a historic moment, not only because it is Riyadh's first inauguration of hosting COP16, but because we are discussing a crucial part of our society, the most vulnerable, the most neglected, our children. And as we discuss, and as we are in this vibrant community where conversations and policies emerge, we want to shed light on how desertification, land degradation, and also drought are affecting children disproportionately, whether it be their health, their education, or their future. I would firstly like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our panelists here with us today. Mr. Tom, Director of Food Systems and Nutrition, Global Affairs Canada, and additionally, Mr. Tatinda Lehman, Executive Member of WUCAT. The purpose of our discussion today is not to just understand and think about the challenges posed by DLDD, but we are here to reimagine the policies and the programs through a child-sensitive lens. So now let's begin with our first question. And this question is directed to Mr. Tom. So as we all know, we have been facing challenges with integrating the needs of children into DLDD for decades, with millions of children today suffering and are being exposed to severe droughts and to food insecurity. So our question is, what do you see as the most significant behaviors and barriers to including children's needs in policies and programs? And could you also share specific actions that have worked in your experience? Thank you.
That is actually a very loaded question. And I will not try to give you a university thesis about it. But I think at the end of the day, children, youth are partners in our fight against basically the triple planetary crisis. You talk about land degradation, but those of us in the environment world, we talk about climate change, nature loss, and pollution and waste. So pollution is air, soil, water. So trying to, if you were to change the recommendations to include nature loss and climate change, it would still work. So the next idea is this. In order for things to change, you have to ask yourself, if you are in a position of power, you are in a position of power in the sense of creating knowledge. When I was the co-chair of the Council of the Global Environment Facility and I had to host the assembly, I made a decision. I told my team that it has to be an inclusive assembly, that youth must be there and not in, a side event, but at center stage. And so they were all over and they had a voice. And that's one of the recommendations you have is basically make sure that in whatever you do, you include people that are affected by your actions. The second thing is this. I will admit that when I was a board member of the Green Climate Fund, when Save the Children projects or UNICEF projects come on the table, I'm always very happy. And naturally, they were all approved. But it's not because of my knowledge of child sensitivity. It's because of the partners that put it forward, and I rely on the partners to actually make the projects and the partnerships child sensitive. So I'll leave it there for now.
And as we all heard Mr. Tom's amazing explanation, this paints a stark image of the gaps that we need to address. And from here, we have to also think about how we can monitor our progress and how we can hold ourselves accountable. So, Mr. Tatindo, as we strive to improve our accountability, what innovative tracking mechanisms can be introduced to monitor funding and to also increase youth participation in initiatives such as land restoration and water conservation?
Thank you. Thank you very much. A loaded question as well for me. So, I would like to start a little bit where you ended as well, or what you said. The limited recognition of actually children needs, I think it's a basis also for this question, because we need to understand a little bit, okay, where do we start? Do we want to start there that children should not work on the land? So if I'm coming from a sustainable land management with a sustainable land management perspective, so should we introduce sustainable land management practices that are less labor intensive, meaning children are not going to work on the land, they have time to go to school? Or would it go into the direction that we are improving the market, meaning we get more income that children can go to school? So those are very different questions, and if we're also lacking of data on our end to understand, okay, do we have the challenges? And if we can answer these questions already, I think that really also then helps us to install these tracking mechanisms as well. Of course, it's always correlated, I fully agree. And there I would also bring in, you mentioned also, it was mentioned the gender equality, and what is just discussed now over there in the plenaries, it's about gender, it's all about gender. And we have developed also during your times at UNCCD a gender module to actually see what are the impacts of sustainable land management on gender and vice versa, to understand, okay, what is the role of a woman in a sustainable land management good practice, or what kind of hindering elements are there? And I think that very much goes then into the direction, because with this disaggregated data, we know much more about where do the women contribute, and with that as well with children. As an example, just a very easy example, we asked, okay, why are women in such on a particular good practices, why did they not get the training? Because we knew there was a training and there was everything happened in the region, and we realized, okay, the trainings always took place between 10 and 12. And of course, women cannot participate between 10 and 12 because then they're cooking in those rural areas. Meaning, do we then want to have the women participating, but who is then cooking? Or who is collecting the water? So all these things are somehow coming together. And I think with this new tool as well in our WOCAT database, we get a little bit more information on gender, which has a direct impact on youth and especially on children as well.
Thank you so much for this comprehensive answer. And as we all heard, that Mr. Tatinda highlighted how tracking is vital, but also finding solutions that are interdisciplinary and inclusive is crucial. And this brings us to a key question about collaboration directed to all our panelists. So the question is, with DLD affecting us, for example, and children, in health, education, and social protection, how can we strengthen cross-sectoral collaboration to ensure better outcomes for children? And from your perspective, what are the major challenges to such collaborations and how can we overcome them?
I can try. Well, I mean, this is already a very tricky question, not only for children. I mean, that's in general a tricky question if it is coming to land. I mean, land does not, is of course, it's not, it does not have barriers, isn't it? So if you're talking about sand dust, I was mentioned before, if you're talking about water, it's not just one country who has actually then a regulation on it. It's really then across, let's say, across countries. And I think this is one of already a very challenging issue. If we then take any action in a specific area, it does not mean that other areas might not be affected at all.
Yes.
I just stop here now. I don't want to take all the time, Tom.
So I'll share with you what I'm doing right now. I am Canada's senior official for scaling up nutrition, and I'm also the one responsible for Team Canada for Nutrition for Growth Summit. And what we're talking about is exactly what you're thinking about, which is, okay, we're talking about people here. People is not just about land. It's not just about the school. It's just not about water. It's all of it. So if we are interested in making sure that children, youth grow up healthy, happy, and have hope, what do we need to do? So one of the key ideas that a lot of people realized was, let's focus on school-ready child. So it's not only about, vitamin A supplementation, school meals and stuff like that, because I was a refugee, I was hungry, and I had to go to my neighbor's, actually family, extended family, and borrow a few fruits here and there. But if you don't have proper nutrition, you're not going to be able to focus in school. And it's not only you that is compromised. It is your own kids also. And that's why I really like the Nutrition for Growth Summit process, is because it brings together issues of climate, land degradation, food security, health, education, all of it together. One central idea is that right now we're focusing on transitioning towards resilient and sustainable food systems for nutrition for all. So, and a lot of these questions are being tackled, but of course we have to translate it into really concrete actions.
So thank you to all our panelists for their thoughtful insights. And we also have joining us here Mr. Khalid Cherokee, and he is the chair of the African group as well. And now we would like to open up the floor to the audience if anyone has other questions. Yes, and please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for holding space for for youth and children and bringing your insight. My name is Ragad Fathaddin. I'm from Saudi, Jeddah. I'm the founder and CEO of Sangha. Siddha Mahab, Sangha means community or a group of people that uplift you in your journey. And a lot of the work we do really kind of looks in healing the disconnect between humanity and nature by investing in inner well-being and inner development of individuals for external well world, because the state of the world is nothing but a reflection of the state of the citizens of the world. So I understand the value of the work you do truly. I do look at it from a well-being perspective, and you bring in the health. But I feel at the same time, a lot of the time when we discuss health, well-being is not very much brought into the conversation. And I was wondering, where is there room for that here? What efforts are being invested in well-being? It's very much interconnected. For the longest time, it's been a secondary priority, but do we have enough data for it to not be the case anymore? I have so much. We are loaded with questions and like layers. So I'm sorry. I know that's not your approach, but it's an opportunity, to get insight. Thank you.
So thank you for that question. I truly agree with you, not only professionally but personally, that it's not about just physical health, but it's also spiritual health. And
Sorry, everyone. We're going to take a break for a few minutes.
so there you go. That is a contribution to our spiritual health. But to answer your question quickly, it is one of the missing, forgotten issues in international development and in anything that I've touched on for the past 27, 28 years. And I've been working at the World Bank on Green Climate Fund issues and even the nutrition discussions. Inner well-being is not being addressed, period.
Thanks a lot. I just wanted to add something to that because I think as UNICEF as well, we've tried to work a lot around these issues. For example, on mental health linked to climate and the impacts on children and youth. There's a lot of work around that. And we've done a U report. We've done a lot of surveys around that. We've also created different websites where we talk about that. We talk about the impacts of climate on children and youth and what they would like to see as solutions, because this has been very, it's been very central actually in the work that we do around environmental issues. But yes, thanks for asking this question. I think it's great you raised it. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, you can have the floor.
Something to work.
Hello, Khalid Al-Murshid, a MISC delegate and founder and CEO of Barg Limited Company. In my company, we do things very similar to what Ragad mentioned. We're the first branded healthy food cafeteria in schools in the kingdom. So we offer nutritious meals for schools, school kids, and we do it with affordable pricing. We're not a non-profit; we're a for-profit social enterprise, but we are trying to incorporate sustainable and nutritious curriculum in schools as well. You mentioned resilient food systems, and we're looking for new ways to kind of involve sustainable practices. So if you have any advice for us, anything we're missing, and if you can mention like an example of a resilient food system that we can apply here in the KSA. Thank you.
So I will do you one favor, which is introduce to a friend of mine who actually was the director in charge of transforming food services at Simon Fraser University in Canada. And his model was so good, affordable pricing, and very nutritious for the kids. And also in a way that they can eat as much as they need to, 24/7 when they need to. And that is being replicated by other universities. So give me your card and I'll give you a connection to my friend Sid Mehta, who actually was at Baku at COP29 sharing that as well. Is that okay?
Yes, my question will come a bit from a different angle because we didn't talk about, we all just talk about that people can go to school, but not what actually they learn at school. And if I heard that, I think it would also be nice to link that directly with education, meaning what kind of food do they get? Where is it coming from? What's the impact of this food? Because then that creates a certain sensibility, and that also helps in the education, in the behavior perhaps later on of the children.
Thank you, everyone, for your participation. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Cherokee to give us more insights on what the African delegation is doing right now.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for giving me the floor. And firstly, I would like to thank warmly UNICEF for inviting me to be part of that interesting panel to share with you some insight from our side as the African group of negotiators with the United Nations Convention on Combat Desertification. But at first, I would like also to recall some important information regarding land resources and also regarding the actual situation. So as you know, all land resources are vital for a human being, for our life. They are fulfilling multiple functions in terms of water supply, food security, income creation, and also in terms of biodiversity conservation, climate change mitigation and adaptation with, how we call it, an optimized rates of cost and benefits. When we are investing in land resource restoration, we are getting multiple benefits with a very optimized rate in terms of cost and benefits. But the current situation is, even though those resources are very important for humanity, they are undergoing a huge portion in terms of degradation. The land resource degradation is following upward tendency. Based on the factual data that we have now, the land degradation is estimated at 100 million hectares per year, and before we were talking about 12 million hectares per year. And also, the actual situation is marked by other item regarding droughts. Drought actually is gaining momentum in terms of frequency, intensity, also in terms of spatial extent, and also in terms of the magnitude of the impacts. And the situation of land degradation, if we don't intervene as it should, the situation could be worse because the driver of degradation are still there and they are getting worse, and the situation could be amplified. I give you just some sample. Population growth is also important. By 2050 will be 9 billion. And also the consumption scheme of food has been changed. During the last 20 years, there is an increase of 5%, and also cities are extending at the expense of agriculture croplands. So if we didn't take some strong decision on that, the situation could be worse. This is one, and the required effort in order to achieve land degradation neutrality is estimated there is a need to restore 1.5 billion hectares. So it's an enormous quantity, and we need the contribution of everyone. We need private sector, we need civil society, we need also the involvement of international organization, we need also youths. And also, youths are down with their energy, and we should invest on that in capacity building. We should sensitize youths to give them a big window to express themselves, to be much more organized, and also to impact the decision. The youths, they are the future generation, because we are really it's an important investment. And I'm very happy to see that recently within the negotiator team, we have some youth negotiator, and this gives us hope that will be colleagues that will take the flag after, because now we know that in the African group, many colleagues, many pillars, they will be retired within a few years. But now giving the flag to youth is very important, and also investing in capacity building is very critical and important. This is from our perspective, and also to give them the required means to be operational on the field, creating associations, some platform for exchange to build capacity in terms of technology, in terms of best practices. So globally, this is what I could share with you. And for negotiation, the African group is pushing forward in order to have some strong decision that could impact the reality on the field, some actionable decisions, not some. Otherwise, we have around the 30 decisions, and each decisions we have 20 paragraph, 20 activities, and really we are advocating for some actionable decision. For drought, we are advocating for a protocol for financing, or advocating for an increase for advising, and also for the implementation, to scale up the implementation at ground level. So thank you so much for your attention. And I'm here if there is any question for which I could reply, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Cherokee, for your valuable insights. And inspired by Mr. Cherokee mentioning private sectors, we have one last question for our esteemed panelists. And the question is, how can innovative financial mechanisms like public and private partnerships can ensure adequate funding for child systems and protective ideologies to be set in hand in countries all around the world?
That is a tough one, even for me. So, just to give you a sense of where I come from, 10 years ago in Addis, Canada, that was me and my minister with the World Economic Forum and OECD and many other partners, including Black Rhino from Africa. We launched the world of blended finance. That was the nature of her question. And we also built Convergence Blended Finance Incorporated. We have done public-private foundation blending for energy. That's not a problem. We've done it for even affordable surgery for vision. That's not a problem. For children and youth, that is a nut that even I still have to think through on how to crack. But it is just like mental well-being and so on and so forth. We need to crack it. Yes. So, sorry, don't know yet, but on it.
Okay, does anyone like to add anything? Okay, it's okay. As we transition back, I would like to thank everyone for their active engagement. And remember, everyone, these conversations are the hallmark to transformative policies. Thank you so much, and I will be handing back the floor to our esteemed chair. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Al-Anud, for a very inspiring session and talent, from what I've seen here today. Again, also thank you so much to our panelists, Mr. Tom and also Mr. Telando and Mr. Tariq. Thank you so much. We're still ongoing, yeah? So we still have some remaining parts, and I would like to now hand over to Ruqayya.
Thank you so much. No, I think this was an inspiring panel. This was a youth-led panel, by the way. I would like to ask everyone to please clap your hands for Alanud, our great moderator. She put this all together with the great questions. I think it was nice to see from her perspective what were the main points and questions that she wanted to ask, and hear you talk about them. So I think it was really nice to have her. Thank you so much. And thanks to the panelists. Thanks, Mr. Khalid, for joining. I know that it's been a tough day. So thanks for coming despite the super busy schedule. And thank you also, Tatenda and Tom. Now that we are getting to the last segment of this session, one of the things we wanted to talk about is really how do we integrate these issues in COP? Of course, right? That's really why we have Canada and we have the African group here, because we talked about protocols. I like what the chair of the African group was saying, having very concrete, actionable recommendations. We know how the decisions are drafted at COP. We know that there are intense negotiations around that. Of course, we would like to have you as champions of children and youth. We also know that there is the youth engagement strategy that is being approved. It will be approved, I believe, at this COP. It's been drafted, and UNICEF contributed also to that effort. But we also showed the specific vulnerability of children. And addressing children's needs requires more cross-sectoral collaboration. It requires more funding. It requires child-responsive policies and programs. And we talked about some of the indicators. So I guess this is now a question to parties' representatives. So it's really for Tom and Khaled to tell us, how do you see these reflected in the COP16 decisions? Really, that's what we are interested about. And the second piece is, how can we help you? What type of data, information do you need from us as international agencies, as we are working also with partners like VOCAT, to prepare, to inform your decisions and discussions at COP? So we organized another session for you. After this, over to you, Tom and Khalid. What do you need from us, and how do we get this back to the COP?
From UNICEF, what we need from you, from a perspective as the chair of the African group, and as I said before, so the COP16 is a different COP from our perspective as the African group. This COP should be a turning points in terms of gaining the momentum regarding the contents and the tenure of decision that we will take. Why? Because we've started a process from COP15 regarding the main issue. We established the intergovernmental working group on droughts and another one on the midterm evaluation. And the midterm evaluation of the strategic framework of the convention, it's an opportunity, it's a key opportunity to give us a window in order to adjust what should be adjusted and to reinforce what should be reinforced. And also regarding financing, we had a decision in order to make a needs assessments and to set up a roadmap to fill the gaps. So we came from 2.5 years, we triggered this process, now we should take decision. And also, the main important that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and I take the opportunity to reiterate our thanks to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for organizing COP16, has given to that scope a momentum. A very important momentum. Is the biggest scope that has been organized within the UNCCD process. So from our perspective, it's an opportunity that we shouldn't miss in order to have some strong decision on that. So to help us, what we need, we are in a negotiation process, and we have parties, we have institutional partners. We should really try to explain to each other there is a huge need to act. it's not an option. It's not now, we don't have a choice. Situation on the ground is getting worse, and we need some advocacy from your side to make our views the closest and to inform all parties and colleagues and institutional that the situation, but this is based on factual data. It's not a hope, it's not some, how we call it, some feeling, but we have factual data, and we have just to share this with everyone, every stakeholder, and also to try to make this closest. And in terms of human solidarity, there are many people who are suffering, and it's time to act differently and to do things in otherwise, to not be stick it to do business as usual, because business as usual has shown its weakness regarding many critical issues. This is what we could request from your side. Thank you so much.
Well, he gave you the party lines on what to do with COP and what is needed. For Canada, it's very simple. You said that we are a champion, we are very vocal about gender equality, but you could actually translate it into children, youth, women and girls, indigenous peoples, and so on, private sector, all partners in this enterprise. So the question now is that when you're thinking about COPs, it's really a battle of strategic inserts of words, okay? It's not, you cannot put in a book. So you have to look at, say, all of these resolutions and what are those few words that you can insert in order to inspire action. That youth, children are partners. They need a voice, they need to be at the decision-making table, and when we actually do projects or regional consultations or national consultations, they must be there so that we can translate what you have found from 2.4% of climate finance to something more appropriate. And my suggestion to you is this. COP decisions are great, but you were right to focus on the money. So if you're talking about the Green Climate Fund, if I had the benefit of this data and everything else when we negotiated the second replenishment of the Green Climate Fund, we would have done a better job. And you will have the opportunity with the 9th replenishment of the Global Environment Facility and the subsidiary climate funds. So in the world of environment funds, those are the only two institutions you need to really make sure that there are around 50 decision makers only and 2 secretariat. As long as they understand, they'll be able to discuss it, and nobody can say no to children.
And thanks a lot. Just listening to you also, there my question comes up. I mean, we have also include youth. So we are going for a gap analysis. What kind of information is missing? What do we need to tackle? And there, in this gap analysis, I would like to see as well, okay, what is covered by the youth group and what is missing? Because for us, this is often challenging. Is something that we are actually tackling, can that be represented by the youth? Or do we need to have this additional body as well? And I think if you can show these differences as well between children, youth, and these different needs, I think that would help a lot.
Hello? I think it's working, yeah. Well, the time passes so quickly, I think. It looks like it's been very interesting panel discussion, and I myself have been very much, today I think I've been enlightened, I can say. But I have seen some, have heard a lot of good points which coming out. And first of all, I think there were also some jargons here, which I felt like, DLDD. So I don't know. I guess everybody's aware. Yeah, when we say DLDD, it's known to everybody. Yeah, in this space. Yeah, so it's kind of like desertification, land degradation, and drought. Okay, and then there is also, I guess, LDN. And is that, yeah? So also that's another one. Land degradation neutrality. But I think there are some key words which also came out today here, which I think they are very, very interesting. I mean, first of all, this policy brief, yeah, which you are just, we are not just launching here. I think it's important because it provides that perspective, those information about the impact of the DLDD on children and youth, and to what extent their needs are important. And I think nutrition came very strongly. Tom talked a lot about nutrition and how that's very important, but also education. I think you spoke very eloquently about education. It's not only attending school, but what you will get in the school and to what extent there will be space and time. But importantly, I think there has been recognition, yeah, a conviction that we have to make sure that children and youth are partners of COP16, and they are going to be part of the decision-making table, and their perspectives and views need to be taken into consideration. And they will be also, as I've seen now from Al-Anud and her other colleagues, they are going to be our agents of change so they can take action. And I think that's very, very important. So really just to say congratulations everyone here for a very important and very successful and very inspiring actually panel discussion. And thank you all for being here, for your time. And we look forward for more engagement and discussion. And I'd like, of course, to thank Rokaya again and our panelists, and also our, Al-Anud here for moderating the session. Thank you, everyone.